I never thought I would find myself reflecting deeply on intimacy at this age, but lately, it seems to occupy my thoughts more than I ever anticipated. At 72 years old, I sit at the kitchen table of my modest but cozy home, the sunlight streaming through the window and casting soft patterns on the tablecloth. The faint sound of a grandfather clock ticks in the background, a gentle reminder of time passing in the quiet hours. I've been married to Margaret for nearly 50 years, and while we both have found ways to enjoy each other's company, I can't help but notice the shadows cast by the years. When we first got together, our nights were filled with energy and passion, the kind that fills the air with crackling electricity. I remember how we would sneak kisses in the kitchen while the pasta boiled over, how our laughter would echo in the empty halls after the children were asleep. It felt endless, exhilarating. But now, it often feels like we're going through the motions. Our conversations have shifted from dreams and plans to pragmatic discussions about medications and doctor's appointments, passion replaced with comfort, and yet there's something comforting about that too, isn't there? But last week, something shifted in me, a long-buried curiosity sparked by an unexpected conversation between Margaret and her sister, who was visiting. They laughed easily over shared memories, and I caught snippets of their chat concerning not only their health but also fragments of intimacy. After all these years, I was stunned by their honesty. Something inside me stirred, a faint ember of desire reigniting. After they left, I awkwardly broached the subject with Margaret, our relationship often tending towards old routines and familiar silences when it came to discussing something so personal. Do you think people our age still? Well, you know? I ventured carefully, my cheeks warming as those words stumbled out clumsily. She paused, a glimmer of surprise in her eyes, then smiled softly, her hands resting on her lap. I think they do, if they want to, she replied, her voice quieter than usual. It was a simple answer, but it felt like a doorway opening, revealing uncharted territory. We held a hesitant dialogue peppered with nervous laughter, memories of our youth spilling over into this new understanding that intimacy didn't necessarily dwindle as one aged but transformed in unforeseen ways. However, I still wrestled with doubts. Could I even make her feel desired? Would I even want to? The next evening, as we settled into our familiar nightly routine, I made a bold decision. I lit a few candles and played soft jazz in the background, a scene eerily reminiscent of our early days. Margaret looked at me, a curiosity sparking in her eyes, and it seemed for a moment we were both peering through time, stepping into an era we thought we'd left behind. I took her hand, and together we ventured into a conversation about our fears and desires. I admitted that I sometimes found myself longing for the kinds of intimacy we had before, the laughter, the warmth, the connection. To my surprise, Margaret confided in me that she had felt similarly, that while the days of wild passion might be behind us, she still yearned for closeness, the kind that transcended physicality, running deep as the roots of our long-shared life. In a way, it freed us both. We began exploring what intimacy could look like now. It wasn't always easy, but it became a journey we embarked on together rather than apart, a dance of sorts to rediscover ourselves after years of being swept up in day-to-day life. I learned to appreciate the little moments, the way she looked at me just before bed, the gentle kisses we shared that spoke volumes of the love we felt. Although we might not physically connect the same way anymore, that doesn't diminish our bond. As the months pass, I've found comfort in the quiet intimacy of simply being with her, and it feels like we've woven ourselves closer together than ever before. Sometimes, it feels like the world has a way of nudging us into rediscovery, reminding us that love is a tapestry, one that evolves through experiences and time. In some ways, the conversations we have now feel even richer than they used to, filled with decades of laughter and compromise, lessons learned, and dreams still clinging to the edges of our hearts. And while the journey may not have led us back to the youthful lust of years gone by, it has brought us to a place of tenderness and understanding, one that feels infinitely worthwhile. Update: just last night, Margaret suggested we take a dance class together, something we had always talked about but never got around to in our younger years. As I helped her into her coat, I felt an exhilarating thrill I thought had long faded. A new chapter awaits us both, maybe even more rewarding than we could have ever dreamed, proving that love remains vibrant, even amid life's shadows. As I stood there, feeling the warmth of Margaret's happiness radiating off her, I couldn't help but marvel at how life had a way of circling back, of offering second chances when you least expected them. Dancing had always been a passion of ours, a shared dream we chatted about during late nights with glasses of wine, our young hearts believing we would always have time for it. But as life often does, it weaved in obligations, careers, and family, pushing our whims aside until they became distant echoes. Last night, however, while we sipped chamomile tea at the kitchen table, Margaret's eyes sparkled with a youthful enthusiasm that ignited something deep within me. "Let's finally do it," she said, her voice playful but sincere. I felt a flutter of excitement. Our days were often filled with simple routines, watching the afternoon sun cast golden hues over the garden, tending to our roses, or bickering about the best way to prepare a casserole. But this suggestion felt like an invitation. To break free from those small rhythms and embrace something bigger, something alive. The image of us, hand in hand, swaying to music we might not remember but that would surely come rushing back to us, made me suddenly aware of how much I missed that spontaneous spirit. The next day, I found myself standing outside the local dance studio, butterflies fluttering in my stomach as I took in the pastel pink walls, the bright posters of couples turning elegantly under bright lights. I remembered all those times we had pulled each other into our small living room, a dimly lit space where we would crank up the old record player, twirling awkwardly, letting the music lead us into laughter instead of grace. As I stepped inside, the scent of polished wood mixed with faint notes of perfume filled my senses, another layer of nostalgia wrapping around my thoughts. Margaret arrived not long after, a vibrant ensemble of colors that made her stand out amidst the other dancers' muted clothing. Her smile was wide, a mix of pride and a hint of nervousness, and in that moment, I knew we were both stepping into the unknown together. The instructor welcomed us, a kind-hearted woman with hair like spun silver who seemed to dance through the air rather than walk. She made us feel welcomed, helping to ease our nerves, and soon we found ourselves with a few other couples, learning basic steps to a waltz. The music hung in the air, a gentle stream of melodies that caressed our hesitant movements. As we practiced, I felt Margaret's hand clasped tightly around mine, our mismatched rhythm becoming a shared heartbeat. I couldn't help but chuckle at our lack of coordination. It was as if our bodies were reluctant to remember what they once knew so well. But the laughter, oh, the laughter was the best part. Every misstep led to bursts of joy, and each twirl brought us closer together, weaving new memories that felt like ribbons tying our lives in a joyful knot. I noticed Margaret's face bloom under the soft glow of studio lights, her cheeks flushed, not from the exertion but from rediscovering a part of herself that had always been there, just waiting for the right moment to re-emerge. My heart felt light as I watched her revel in the music, her feet moving in sync with mine, even if we fumbled along the way. The shyness we experienced in our earlier years melted away, replaced by an openness to be vulnerable with one another, an understanding that our age brought a kind of freedom we never anticipated. As weeks turned into months, our dance classes became a sanctum for our love. We would practice in the living room, blinds drawn and music loud enough for the neighbors to hear the joyful chaos. We stumbled and laughed our way through steps, finding our flow in the intimate spaces of our home. Each dance became a dialogue, a way to express what we often left unspoken in our day-to-day lives, turning our bodies into the very words we sometimes struggled to articulate. With every spin and every close embrace, I discovered shades of Margaret that I hadn't seen in decades. Her spirit shimmered brighter than the fading daylight that stretched across our living room floor, a reminder of the connection we'd cultivated over the years. It was more than just learning to dance, it was like peeling back layers of time to reveal the vibrant souls we had once been. And so, our dance journey transformed into something deeper, an exploration of intimacy that I hadn't expected at this stage in our lives. One evening, as we swayed in the soft light, Margaret looked up at me with a glimmer in her eye, whispering that this felt just as fulfilling as any passion we had shared in our youth. Her words wrapped around my heart, stirring emotions I hadn't touched in years, illuminating the fact that our journey wasn't just about the steps, it was about learning how to lead and follow together, how to trust each other both on the dance floor and off it. Before our first major performance, an end-of-term showcase where friends and family would watch, we stood backstage, taking a moment to breathe. I felt her hand grasp mine with fierce determination, her eyes locking onto mine as she said, "No matter how it goes tonight, I'm proud of us." I understood then, more than ever, that life, with all its complexities and challenges, had led us here, not to perfection, but to a celebration of love in its purest form. As the music began, we stepped onto that polished floor, dissolving into the flowing rhythm. We weren't just practicing our dance, we were unveiling a new chapter of us, a testament to love that matured like wine, deepening with time. And as I spun her around, the applause enveloped us, an echo not just of our performance but a culmination of a lifetime of love, laughter, and new beginnings that would perhaps last us until the very end. Yet it was that warmth of her hand in mine, the laughter that floated into the air, and the joy of sharing something we had once let slip away that stayed with me, reminding me that growth and love are forever entwined, steadily guiding us even through the shadows. It felt as if the universe had conspired to give us this gift, a gentle nudge that reminded us both that life is a dance, and every step we take, regardless of age, leads us back to the heart of what it means to be truly alive. As the days melted into weeks following that delightful suggestion, I found myself enveloped in a sense of anticipation I hadn't felt since the early days of our relationship. Margaret and I were scheduling our dance classes, those precious hours soon occupying a place on our calendar surrounded by mundane appointments. I chuckled one day as I crossed out a dentist visit and wrote in Dance with Margaret, 7 p.m., relishing how the very act of arranging our new endeavor felt almost rebellious in its simplicity. Our classes were held at the local community center, a place I had driven past countless times but never thought to enter. The building, once unfamiliar, soon became a sanctuary for our blossoming connection. Walking hand in hand past the classes in session, I marveled at the energy radiating from the younger couples, their laughter mixing with the swish of fabric and the shuffle of shoes against polished floors. Occasionally, Margaret would tease me, claiming I had 2 left feet, but I found joy in the playful banter. Each step, even the ones awkwardly learned, was more than just a movement, it became an opportunity to explore ourselves as partners again. The rhythm of life, the little joys of spinning her around, or catching her gaze as we misstepped, reminded me of the playful dance of our early romance. One quiet Wednesday evening, after a particularly invigorating class, we found ourselves on the center floor, surrounded by soft amber lights and the lingering echoes of music. The instructor had left us to practice on our own, and as the last notes faded away, I pulled Margaret close. I could feel her heartbeat synchronizing with mine. It was as if the world outside had dissolved, leaving just us trapped in our tiny universe. In that embrace, I dared to whisper sweet nothings, my words laden with affection as I praised her grace, her beauty, the way she always managed to make the ordinary feel magical. Her laughter, a soft chime, filled the space and lifted the very essence of what we had fought for over the years. "Can you believe we're doing this?" she mused, her eyes sparkling like the stars we often gazed up at from our porch. In that moment, looking into her eyes, I realized how far we had come from the complacency that once threatened to sway between us like an unwelcome breeze. We were redefining intimacy, not just through touch, but through these shared experiences that united our spirits. As we left that night, the chill of the evening air embraced us, but it was the warmth of her presence that kept the cold at bay. We strolled through the neatly lined streets, our laughter bubbling over like old times, and I felt a wave of gratitude wash over me. Each step toward our home became a pathway lined with memories from our past but illuminated by the newfound joys we were crafting together. Weeks turned into months, and our weekly classes turned into a ritual I held dear. I noticed subtle changes blooming in Margaret, as if she carried a light within her that hadn't flickered in years. It was in the way she danced through the kitchen while cooking or how she surprised me with spontaneous hugs filled with a zest for life. One would think that as we passed the threshold of 70, we should be slowing down, but instead, we were speeding towards a vibrancy I never thought possible. We had become fixtures in our dance class, learning the tango and salsa, both of which challenged our bodies but also made us laugh through the awkwardness of it all. Of a Tuesday afternoon, while everyone was out watching the world unfold, we found the courage to enroll ourselves in a local dance competition. I worried about the footwork and whether we would appear ridiculous, but Margaret held my hand and assured me we could tackle anything together. The day of the competition arrived with a flurry of excitement and nerves rippling through the atmosphere. We dressed in our best, Margaret in a flowing dress that twirled like a bloom around her as she moved, and me in a crisp button-up that felt both new yet familiar. Standing back to back beneath a makeshift arch adorned with flowers, I could sense that this event, regardless of the outcome, was a celebration of us, our journey, our resilience, our laughter. When the music started, it was as if we melded into one, our bodies responding together like a perfect melody, pulsating to the rhythm of our hearts. I could see from the corner of my eye the crowd smiling. Younger couples stood in awe while the more seasoned spectators murmured words of encouragement. And in that moment, I realized it wasn't about winning or losing but about reclaiming the thrill of living boldly. By the time we reached the end of our final spin, the applause was a roar, and I caught a glimpse of Margaret's face, her joy radiating like sunlight, proving that aging did not extinguish passion, it enriched it. When the trophies were handed out, our names were called not for first place, but for something even more poignant, the Best Spirit Award. It felt like a gentle affirmation of our efforts rather than a setback, a trophy representing playfulness and the audacity to embrace each moment. As we stood on that stage, side by side surrounded by laughter and clapping, I marveled at how far we had ventured together, from the quiet moments of complacency to this incredible, shared journey enriched by love. In reflection, I realized that life has a way of surprising us, even when shadows loom, and love remains vibrant through tender gestures, adventure, and the willingness to dance cheek to cheek into the unknown. As we sank back into our cozy home that night, warmed by the flicker of candlelight and the weight of our shared experiences, I knew we had only just begun to explore the beautiful dance of love that continues to grow, its rhythm echoing softly through the years, reminding us that every step we take leads us back to the core of what it means to feel alive, together. I never thought I'd gain clarity from a conversation that boiled down to a simple question: am I the asshole for reminding my mom that she disappeared for 6 years? It all started on an ordinary Tuesday, just after my 22nd birthday, when I received a text from my mom, one that seemed to cascade through the silence we had established over time. "Can we talk?" The message read, punctuated with an ellipsis that left something unsaid, shrouded in tension. After everything, I wasn't sure what talking meant anymore. I'd spent too long trying to piece together the echoes of my childhood. The splintered memories of her absence were like a jigsaw puzzle with half the pieces missing. She left when I was 14, without a note, without a sign. I remember spending countless nights pacing my bedroom, wrapping the arms of my favorite stuffed animal tighter around my chest as if it could absorb the sadness creeping under my skin, desperately waiting for the front door to creak open and reveal her to me, only, it never did. When she resurfaced 6 years later, it was an awkward reunion. She was different, and so was I. She floated in and out of my life, wearing an expression that oscillated between remorse and urgency, as if she were a ghost trying to tether herself to a world she had once inhabited. We meandered through awkward lunches and tentative conversations, but the weight of what had happened still hung between us like an unspoken wound, raw and unhealed. My friends advised me to make peace with her, to forgive and forget, but the truth was, forgiveness felt like an uphill battle often punctuated by waves of resentment. One evening, as we sat on the porch, watching fireflies flicker like tiny memories in the dusk, I felt a surge of boldness. The conversation had ebbed and flowed, and my mom's laughter was light, yet it triggered a memory I thought I could gloss over. "You know, it's strange," I said, almost tentatively, "that you were just gone for all those years." The moment the words spilled from my lips, everything shifted. Her laughter froze, the carefree late summer air turned thick as she turned to me, wide-eyed with surprise. I had never directly confronted her about disappearing, and maybe that was the mistake I had made all along. The evening spiraled into an emotional chasm, her defense mechanisms kicking in with a vehemence I had never witnessed before. She insisted I didn't get it, that nobody understood what she went through, her voice rising and falling like a tumultuous sea. I watched her struggle to articulate what I knew she couldn't, a deep-rooted pain that bubbled beneath her surface. But what I had said pierced through the surface tension of our fragile newfound relationship, rendering her defenses useless. I felt like I had triggered a dormant storm inside her, and while part of me anguished over this, the other fired with a stubborn insistence to be heard. "You left me," I whispered, and with that, the tremor of truth hung palpably in the air. I wasn't sure if I was asking for an apology or for her to acknowledge my pain, but it seemed to matter less than the cathartic release of finally expressing my resentment. After what felt like hours of silence, she finally spoke. "I'm so sorry," her voice fractured like glass, each word laced with the weight of regret. As we both sat in the quiet aftermath, I realized that this moment was a turning point for us, a tentative bridge that flickered with the promise of new foundations. This wasn't an easy reconciliation. I still wrestled with the anger, the abyss of loneliness stretched before me, but it became clear that she, too, was trapped in her own reservoir of regret. Our past was marred, yet the possibility of healing was glimmering at the horizon. Weeks rolled by, each conversation layered with new understanding, moments where I reminded her how difficult her absence was and the emotional scars it left, but she met me with transparency, peeling back her trauma like layers of an onion. Eventually, we crafted a bond riddled not just with apologies but with a shared willingness to confront the realities of our intertwined lives. Though the past couldn't be rewritten, it became clearer that I didn't want to dwell on it forever. Instead, I aimed to look towards what lay ahead and how we could forge a future from the ashes of our fragmented past. In an unexpected twist of fate, my initial question transformed into a catalyst for healing. I found compassion for my own pain, an awareness that understanding can twist miracles out of memories that haunt and separate. In the end, as we walked hand in hand one summer evening, I quietly realized I was not the asshole. I had simply needed to remind her of the truth to reclaim my own narrative and, perhaps, hers alongside it. As I wrap up this story, I can't help but reflect on how dramatically things can evolve. For anyone who stumbles upon this, if you've found yourself in a similar position, don't shy away from the hard truths. Sometimes the path to healing is paved with discomfort and confrontation, and that's not just okay, it can be transformative. Update: a few months later, we still have our ups and downs, but we talk regularly. We even plan family dinners now. It's a work in progress, but losing her taught me the value of open communication. Sometimes, reminding someone of their old self is precisely what you both need to move forward. As I sank into the familiar comfort of my worn-out armchair, I couldn't help but smile at how unconventional our journey had been. In the months since that pivotal moment, a conversation that unearthed years of unresolved pain, I felt like I was traversing a landscape continuously covered in fresh snow, each step unraveling new layers of understanding that had remained buried for so long. My mom and I had made significant strides, but the relationship was far from perfect. We had our fair share of awkward silences and unresolved grievances that seemed to loom over dinner tables like unsettling guests who just wouldn't leave. Yet each time we gathered, a collection of mismatched forks and plates heaped with homemade pasta or tacos, we found ourselves leaning a little more towards one another, laughter puncturing the tension that would have trapped us once. I remember one evening when we decided on Mexican, the warm kitchen filling with the spicy scents of sautéed peppers and garlic. Our conversation drifted to lighter territory. My mom made a joke about how many cooking shows I had watched. I couldn't help but tease back about her questionable interpretation of a taco. She laughed, her face lighting up as she recalled how I had always criticized her less than authentic attempts in the kitchen. The ease of it all was beautiful and yet fragile, like the last leaves of autumn trembling on the branches before winter fully set in. But amid these sporadic bursts of joy, we would still occasionally trip over the jagged stones of unresolved tension. There were days when the memories of her disappearance loomed heavily in the air, unspoken, a reminder of discomfort hanging like a fog. While we made efforts to engage in deeper conversations about the past, she often glossed over the harder parts, and I had to remind myself, sometimes in frustration, that healing doesn't always mean confronting everything at once. I learned this not just from our interactions but from conversations with friends who had similarly tangled familial relationships. Each interaction became a delicate balancing act as I tried to weigh my need for transparency against her apparent aversion to confronting certain aspects of her absence. But deep down, I felt there was a possibility, a gentle pulse of hope amid the chaos, that we could find a way through it together. One rainy afternoon, a few months into our renewed relationship, I was sifting through old family photos while dusting the shelves in my bedroom. I uncovered an image of us, taken during a camping trip when I was about 10. In the picture, we were grinning widely, her hair wild and tousled by the wind, a soft sunlight draping us with warmth. I hesitated, sensing an urge to share it with her, wanting to evoke the nostalgia we avoided, but anxiety wrestled at my throat. What if it prompted an uncomfortable conversation? What if I opened up a door that was best left closed? In the end, a quiet determination won out. I forwarded the image to her, and my heart raced as I waited for her response, uncertain of what would surface. A few moments later, my phone buzzed, a simple reply from Mom: "I remember this day. We should go camping again sometime." The words settled around me like a gentle embrace. In that small, unexpected moment, I realized how essential it was to continue fostering these connections, however tentative. Each memory shared, each laugh exchanged, and even the silent contemplations acted as glue, mending a bond that had once frayed to its breaking point. So we planned several family outings, trips to the park, impromptu movie nights, and yes, even that camping trip, which turned out to be a beautiful disaster with an overzealous raccoon raiding our snacks. Each stumble, each genuine laugh, further loosened the decades of hurt, allowing us avenues of genuine connection. Life isn't simply about resolving conflicts, I discovered, it's about embracing the raw, unfiltered moments of humanity, allowing them to reshape your understanding of each other without losing sight of where you both began. Reflecting on these experiences, I chuckled at how naive I had once been, thinking that confronting my mom about her previous disappearance would be the master key unlocking a perfect relationship. The truth was, we humans seem more like a patchwork quilt made of an array of fabric scraps, each piece significant in its imperfection, stitched together by our experiences, laughter, and the love that survived the storms. And now, as I stood amidst the remnants of our initial unresolved conflicts, I felt a quiet pride swell in my heart. We were moving forward, not flawlessly, but rather with intention and openness, and that's what mattered most. Update: it's been nearly a year since I sent that first photo. My mom finally decided to visit my place for the holidays, a huge step for us both. We tackled all the chaos together, barely burnt cookies, holiday songs we forgot the words to, and moments filled with laughter where unspoken truths only led us closer, like the final stitches in our newly knitted bond. There's still room for improvement, reflections on the past yet to unfold, but although we still have our ups and downs, I hold on to the sheer thrill of discovering that reminding someone of their worth can also truly mean reminding yourself. The holiday season that year felt almost surreal, like stepping into a storybook where you get to rewrite the characters and their fates. As my mom arrived at my apartment, the usual nervous tension that would rise in my chest was strangely absent, replaced instead by a flutter of excitement. She came with a suitcase, yes, but it was filled with more than just clothes. It was packed with a hefty dose of hope. We started off small, greeting each other with hesitant smiles that quickly warmed into embraces that longed for connection. We slid into the kitchen, a realm both familiar and foreign as we attempted to recreate our old family traditions. I remember eyeing the kitchen timer and thinking about how I had to remind her it was okay to laugh at our mistakes, instead of crying over them, like before. The cookies were hilariously imperfect, the kind that would make even the worst baking show contestants proud, yet we tried them anyway, laughing over the half-burnt edges and the slight bitterness of too much cinnamon. As we peeled away the layers of holiday chaos around us, our conversations began to unfurl like the delicate branches of a blooming tree, cautiously at first, but blooming all the same. We spoke of her absence without wading through bitterness. We spoke of my childhood without the weight of unresolved shadows. Each word felt like a brushstroke painting a clearer picture of two flawed and fragile beings who found a way back to each other. The moments were punctuated by snatches of holiday songs, our voices blending in harmony and discord, with the lyrics evading us but our spirits dancing freely. One evening, as we curled up on the couch watching old family videos, tiny glimpses into a world that felt both distant and achingly close, I caught her looking at me, a reflection of tenderness and vulnerability in her eyes. She softly admitted she regretted the years lost, yet I saw a flicker of something else, an understanding that our shared laughter and love had the power to bridge even the deepest divides. Those unspoken truths seemed to shimmer in the air between us, invisible threads weaving a tapestry of renewed trust. She expressed gratitude for my patience, which felt oddly reversed. My heart was grateful too, but for her presence, for her willingness to try anew. Each conversation, each short-lived tiff was a reminder that we were slowly threading together the fragments of our old selves with the new ones we were forging. Evenings turned into long discussions about dreams and aspirations, the soft glow of fairy lights glittering like possibilities in the air. Over dinner, we shared stories of our past and hopes for the future, anchoring our relationship in the open air of vulnerability. I felt a profound sense of comfort, her laughter filling the gaps of silence that had once felt like chasms. Sure, we weren't perfect, and perhaps we never would be, but we were learning to navigate this intricate dance of togetherness again. It was all still a work in progress, but as that holiday faded into memory, something undeniably beautiful emerged, a new rhythm that promised growth, however imperfect it might be. I realized that our bond was like those cookies we made, no longer pristine, but bursting with character, sweetness, and the warmth of shared experiences. It was deeply flawed, yet somehow, perfect in its own way. Reflecting on our journey, I understood that confronting the past was more than just a burden, it was a gift, and through those difficult conversations and tender moments, we both found a semblance of peace in the chaos. This tumultuous journey had changed us profoundly, but as I glanced at my mom, now more a friend than a figure of authority, I embraced the uncertainty of our future, knowing we were weaving a story that was all our own. There was a small, nondescript bar on the corner of Maple and 6th, a place where the neon lights flickered like a heartbeat, pulsing softly against the darkened streets of the town as if calling out to lost souls seeking refuge from the weight of their lives. I found myself propped up on a weathered stool, staring into a glass of whiskey, the amber liquid swirling like thoughts I couldn't quite grasp. This evening was like many others, where I sought solace in the bottom of a bottle to drown out the disappointments of a life that felt increasingly unremarkable. At 38, the corners of my world had grown narrower, my marriage to Sarah had become a long, quiet sigh we both struggled to stifle, and my once vibrant dreams had dulled to mere memories aching to be revisited. As I took a deep breath, I prepared to face the same unrelenting questions that had haunted me. Was it all worth it? Was leaving the mundane comfort of my life worth the risk of the unknown? That's when I felt a presence beside me, a chill that crawled up my spine like fingers tracing a spine. I turned my head, curiosity overcoming trepidation, and there he was, a man clad in shadows, his eyes the color of storm clouds promising rain, yet oddly calm. He raised an eyebrow and motioned toward my drink. "Finish your drink, it's time to go," he said, his voice smooth yet chilling, reverberating in the air between us like a whisper shared over grave secrets. I hesitated, my heart pounding in my chest as I tried to decipher the meaning behind his words. "Go where?" The question slipped from my lips, laced with disbelief and a hint of defiance. Death didn't saddle up next to a guy like me at a bar, at least, not in any way I had ever envisioned. As the seconds melted into each other, I felt an odd mixture of fear and resignation drown my thoughts. Here was a moment where the certainty of life clashed with the enticing promise of an escape that the impossible had never offered. I had spent so much time contemplating what lay on the other side of living, now confronted by a figure that embodied it, I felt every uncertainty crash against that newfound realization. "I've seen what awaits you," he said, his voice low, betraying no emotion. "Not just the end, but everything that stands before it and the lives entwined with yours. Their sorrow, their hope, the way they'd miss you." I felt an ache in my chest, a desperation to cling to the threads of life I had thus far taken for granted. Memories of Sarah flashed in my mind, the way her laughter would echo like silver bells around our home, the taste of her kisses that lingered long after they faded, the warmth of her hand in mine during quiet moments that no longer held the same weight. And yet, like all things, they felt dimmed against the gravity of this moment. "And what if I don't want to go?" I asked, my voice trembling, a mixture of defiance and fear. "What if I have more to give?" The man beside me regarded me quietly, a flicker of something, a tinge of understanding, crossing his stormy gaze. "Your choice. Life has always been about choices. But you must ask yourself, are you really living? Or merely existing?" The question hung in the air, heavy and imbued with a challenge I hadn't considered until that moment. My thoughts spiraled to the realities that awaited me, the stagnant evenings spent binge-watching shows instead of sharing stories with Sarah, the hours clocked in at a job that drained the very vitality from my bones, leaving me little but a shadow at home. I thought of the dreams tucked away in boxes, gathering dust like forgotten photographs, my passion for painting, my desire to travel the world, to truly embrace every single heartbeat of this existence. The revelation hit me, perhaps I owed it not just to myself, but to Sarah, to remind us both of the vibrancy life could still offer, not the sunset but the dawn ripe with possibilities. The unexpected realization emerged slowly, rising like a phoenix from the ashes of dread. "What if I want to stay?" I heard myself say, a strange mix of determination and vulnerability. "What if I want to make things right?" At that, the man gave a nod, his demeanor calm yet penetrating. "Then you know what you must do. Sometimes, it isn't about the moments we fear but the ones we choose to embrace." With that, he faded, slipping into the shadows, leaving me alone at the bar, a glass half full in my trembling hand. There was clarity in that final encounter, a spark igniting the shadows of my mind. After that night, I began to reclaim my life, painting again, pursuing dreams once abandoned, breathing new life into the stagnant corners of my marriage. When I returned home that night, I found Sarah still awake, her silhouette soft against the backdrop of moonlit curtains. I shared my journey, the encounter haunting yet liberating, and as we embraced, I felt the heavy chains of complacency start to melt away. In those quiet hours, laughter returned, filling the void that had stretched between us like an endless chasm. I learned how making the choice to move forward and not retreat could turn each drink into a toast, a celebration for life over death, for existence over mere living. As for the question of what lay beyond, I knew it was a mystery I'd unravel one day, but not today. Today, I chose to savor the now. Update: it's been 6 months since that night at the bar, and since then, I've embraced change with open arms. Our home now resonates with laughter, spontaneous trips, and color splashed across canvases. Just last week, Sarah and I took a long weekend trip to the coast, something we talked about but had never done, and I created a piece that conveys the essence of that experience. I think I finally understand what the cloaked man meant about truly living. It's great to feel vibrant again. Life's too short to simply wait for fate to intervene. Sometimes, you must take the reins and weave your own fate. As I sit here, reflecting on the changes that have blossomed in what once felt like a monochrome existence, I can't help but marvel at how far I've come since that fateful encounter with death at the bar. It sounds surreal, almost like the plot of some fantastical novel, but there's a stark clarity in my memories that elevates them from a mere heady swirl of emotion into something profound and tangible. The moments Sarah and I have shared recently shimmer with a new light, each laugh and whispered secret a brushstroke on the canvas of my transformed life. The weekend at the coast was a revelation. We drove along the winding roads, the salty breeze playfully tugging at our hair as waves crashed rhythmically against the shore. Standing before the vastness of the ocean, I felt both small and infinitely alive, just like that feeling described in cheesy motivational quotes I used to roll my eyes at. As I took my first deep, salty breath, I closed my eyes and let the sound of the water drown out my nervous thoughts. It reminded me that potential and possibility are infinite, much like the horizon stretching ahead of us. Later, as the sun dipped into the ocean, I set up my easel in the sand, each brushstroke representing an emotion I hadn't allowed myself to feel in years. The vibrant blues, fiery oranges, and soft purples mirrored the effervescent quality of that sunset, capturing a moment that felt both transient and eternal. Sarah joined me, sitting cross-legged next to me on the cool sand. Her keen eyes flickered from my canvas to the horizon as we talked about everything and nothing, feeling entirely at home in our shared vulnerability, and in that moment, I felt a swell of gratitude wash over me. But the growth hasn't been without its challenges. With every exhilarating moment came a reminder of the past I lived so desperately to escape. There were times when I'd turned to my old habits, workaholism and perfectionism, and moments when silence filled the air as we grappled with unspoken fears. I realized the journey was not just about living vividly but about confronting the shadows that had trailed me during those monotonous years. It was an intricate dance of light and dark, one deserving of exploration. And just as I was understanding the nuances of this duality, the idea of death became more of an abstract companion rather than a menacing specter. It turned into a guiding force whispering encouragement rather than demanding presence. One evening, while painting a tribute to our travels, I paused, letting the brush hover above the canvas as Sarah stepped outside to grab us coffee. I could feel death sitting at the edge of my mind, reminding me of the fleeting nature of these moments. Would the vibrant colors I splashed on the canvas fade as the years rolled on? Would they hold the memories locked within, shimmering brightly or dulled by the passage of time? That's when it hit me. It is the act of creation, the love I imbued into each stroke, that lends permanence to these experiences. I don't need to fear death if I live authentically. I can delve deep into the wellspring of life until it overflows, mingling with the colors of those fleeting moments. Sarah returned then, humming softly to herself, and just the sight of her sparked an uncontainable joy within me. I set the brush down and took a moment to hold her gaze, to bask in the warmth of our shared space. "What are you thinking about?" she asked, her voice soothing yet curious. I smiled, the words tumbling out unfiltered. "What if I painted a mural in our living room, something that captures all the laughter, all the moments, us?" Her eyes lit up, and in that instant, I recognized a shared understanding. We were both co-creating a life of vivid colors, resplendent with the laughter of our now and the hope for our tomorrow. So, here I am now, as I write this, in our sun-drenched living room, surrounded by swathes of color, feeling the pulse of life surging through me like a melody. We're gearing up for our next adventure, a spontaneous plan to explore the mountains, where I hope to capture the majesty of life interwoven with stillness, and perhaps I'll paint another breath of existence onto canvas. Life, I have learned, isn't meant to be a series of what-ifs or if-onlys, it's a series of let's-goes constructed from moments of pure, unabashed joy. And as for death? Oh, it still sits at the bar, ever watchful, but now, I find a certain comfort in glancing over occasionally, raising my glass in a silent toast, a reminder that it's okay to embrace the ephemeral beauty of life and to live it fully until the time comes to hand over the reins. One evening, while I was cleaning up after Sarah had made a delicious dinner full of spices and laughter, my phone buzzed on the table, a message from an old friend I hadn't spoken to in years. It was a simple text, just a photo of a sunset taken at a remote spot we used to frequent, accompanied by the words, "Remember when we used to chase sunsets? Let's do it again." I felt a wave of nostalgia wash over me, mixed with an insatiable urge to reconnect. The tall, warm memories began to coil around me like an old blanket, comfortable yet fragile, reminding me of a time when life felt both simpler and more profound, full of shared dreams and laughter echoing against the backdrop of fading light. I wanted to say yes, to embrace that adventurous spirit I had recently revived, but the reality of everyday life nudged at me like a persistent child eager for attention. The clock ticked steadily, reminding me of responsibilities, of the cozy routine I had built since embracing change. That night, after putting the dishes away, I brought Sarah a fresh cup of herbal tea and shared my thoughts. She listened intently, her eyes sparkling with excitement. "Why not?" she said, her enthusiasm infectious. We can chase sunsets together, just like old times. I've always wanted to take that trip to the mountains, and this seems like the perfect opportunity. Her words ignited a fire within me. It became clear that this was a chance not just to reconnect with my past but also to strengthen my present. The next morning, we planned the trip. Sarah's infectious laughter spurred us on as we sent texts back and forth, packing lists bouncing from my phone to hers. Soon, each task became an excuse to steal glances at one another, relishing the anticipation that built with every fleeting moment. And so, with nothing but the open road before us, a cooler packed with snacks, and art supplies tucked in the trunk, we rolled down the windows, letting the wind embrace us as we left our quaint little town behind in the fading light of day. The mountains rose before us, majestic and commanding, shrouded in lush greens and the promise of undiscovered horizons. That first evening, we stopped at a small clearing, and my heart danced as the sun began its descent, painting the sky with hues of orange, pink, and deep purple. I grabbed my easel, and in that magnificent moment, I felt alive, brimming with thoughts and colors screaming to be captured. As I painted, Sarah interjected with stories of our youth, tales that had faded into the background but now sprung to life under the twilight sky. She told me of camping trips where we had almost gotten lost, of nights spent under a stretch of stars that felt infinite, and each story layered into my memories like a new brushstroke on canvas. The next days unfolded beautifully, with mornings spent hiking up trails and afternoons weaving through local markets where we tasted fresh berries and artisan cheeses, savoring every bite as though we were indulging in stolen secrets. The world blossomed around us, and soon we came to a makeshift picnic table where we shared our favorite wines, laughter mingling with the rustle of leaves. One evening, as dusk draped the landscape, we climbed a small hill and watched the sun make its grand exit, the sky adorned with its glorious palette. It was then that I truly felt the fullness of living. I looked at Sarah, and her face was illuminated by the faint glow of the setting sun, her smile wide and genuine. I felt grateful, vibrating with the realization that every moment we chose to embrace life brought us closer, not just to each other, but to a profound understanding of what it means to willingly embrace the beauty and fragility of existence. Laughing in the glow of the fading day, I confessed, I think I get it now. All those moments we put off because we were just waiting for the right time? Each of those what-ifs wouldn't come close to the actual joys we experience when we say let's go. Her eyes twinkled, mirroring the magnificent stars that had begun to sprinkle the sky. Let's keep saying let's go then, she responded softly, and in that moment, I realized that the cloaked figure, my constant reminder of mortality, had indeed become a mentor of sorts, urging me on, not with fear, but with the sweet impermanence of life, urging me to make the most of the moments I had. Now, even after returning home, my heart still thrums with an insatiable need for adventure. I often find myself wandering through galleries for inspiration, letting my brushes dance across canvases, each stroke reminding me that while death may sit quietly at the bar, it's not the end but rather a soft invitation to embrace every fleeting breath along the way. And on quiet nights when I can feel the weight of solitude surround me like a gentle blanket, I still raise a glass to that figure in the distance, not out of fear, but in gratitude for the lessons learned. With the canvas of my life now filled with vibrant splashes, I'm ready for every let's go that beckons on the horizon, forever aware but unshackled by the ticking clock. What adventures are waiting just beyond the dusk? I suppose we'll find out together, one beautiful moment at a time. It was just another late night scrolling through Reddit when I stumbled across the thread that would change everything. Ask Reddit, what are your thoughts on a Reddit wide ban of X links? The post sparked a debate that ignited something deep within me, intertwining my own life with the virtual chaos of the comments section. My name is Charlie, and like many, I had considered Reddit my refuge, a place where I could hide from the anxieties of daily life. At that moment, though, I was navigating a personal storm. You see, my best friend, Sam, had become obsessed with a specific self-help subreddit that peddled dubious life hacks and questionable motivational quotes. I had seen him spiral deeper into these threads, losing touch with the real world around him. The advice was not only impractical, it blurred the line between inspiration and delusion, and Sam had started to believe every word. I felt like the lone survivor in a sinking ship while everyone around me, including him, jumped overboard for half-formed ideas that only left them floundering. My concern transformed into an internal conflict that crept up on me, whispering questions I was too afraid to voice. Should I intervene? Would it damage our friendship if I called out his fascination with this unyielding stream of pseudoscience? I could envision myself approaching him, a trembling figure trying to pierce through the dense fog of his newfound faith in the absurd. Each day bled into the next, my heart caught in a loop of empathy and frustration as I watched him drift farther away from the person I had known. It wasn't just his obsession, it was how it began to tarnish our connection. Texts went unanswered, our gaming nights cancelled. I felt like a ghost, haunting the remnants of a friendship that was rapidly fading. I wondered if anyone else felt what I was feeling, if any of these Redditors had the same sinking sensation as they typed their opinions, each keystroke echoing with a mix of reasoning and desperation that matched my own chaotic thoughts. Then came the night that everything boiled over. I dropped by unannounced, hoping to break through the barrier he had built around himself. When I walked into his room, it was a shrine to these self-help articles, walls plastered with quotes that floated tentatively on the surface of his reality, mocking our childhood dreams of adventure and inspiration. I stood there, a spectator in my own friend's life, until the wave of disappointment washed over me and crashed into words. Sam, this stuff isn't helping you. You're acting like you've found the magic potion to happiness, but I can't watch you drown in it. You're losing yourself. The silence that followed felt eternal, a chasm carved out by every unread message and every void he had created by immersing himself in the threads of empty promises. The look in his eyes was a mixture of surprise, anger, and something that resembled the fading glimmer of understanding. My heart raced as I prepared for conflict. I only hoped he could see the friendship behind my words, rather than just the accusation. I wanted our bond intact, yet I knew that sometimes, voicing your fears brings clarity, even at the risk of rupture. To my surprise, he didn't lash out. Instead, after a long pause that felt like a spine-tingling eternity, he let out a breath I didn't know he was holding. I guess I didn't recognize it until now. He confessed that he felt lost among the noise of countless suggestions. Our conversation meandered slowly, layers of our friendship peeling back to reveal the insecurities and fears that shaped us both. The tension eased, and I felt a flicker of hope as he began to recognize that the community he had wrapped himself in didn't have the roadmap he needed. Over the next few weeks, we designed a plan together, an amalgamation of our own dreams and the wisdom we had learned through navigating stormy seas in the real world. We started with modest goals and allowed each other the grace to try and fail. As Sam and I began carving new paths together, I watched the sinister grip of that obsessive subreddit ease its hold over him. With each setback, conversations became raw yet enlightening, weaving back the threads of companionship that made our bond stronger. It was a journey of rediscovery through shared vulnerability, a reminder of the importance of real interactions over the churning tides of an online community. Looking back, I can't help but feel thankful for that thread, for the way it pushed me to address my worries. Sometimes it takes a catalyst to kickstart the slow journey back to clarity, whether in life or in friendships. I also made a note to follow the ongoing discussion because I realized that we're all navigating our own unique challenges, even those we can't see. Fast forward several months, and Sam is thriving, taking intrinsic steps fueled not by misguided life hacks but by genuine connections and shared experiences. As for me, I learned that sometimes, love and honesty walk hand in hand, leading us to significant change in those we hold dear. I still scroll through Reddit late at night, but now the screen feels a little more alive, much like my friendship with Sam. Sometimes I wonder how many others are waiting for a nudge, and I hope they find the strength to speak up, just as I did. Perhaps in every online debate, there's a little piece of life waiting to be unraveled, stitched together with the threads of compassion. And those are the moments worth savoring. It was just another evening, the kind where the sun dipped low in a sky bruised with shades of orange and pink, casting a soft glow through my window as I settled down with my laptop. The familiarity of the warm light enveloped me, kindled by the comfort of my worn-out favorite blanket. I opened Reddit, my usual sanctuary, the place where countless stories waited to be unearthed. As I scrolled, I happened upon a post that caught my eye. Ask Reddit, what are your thoughts on a Reddit-wide ban of X links? I could almost envision the heated debates already brewing, a digital tempest tucked away within the screens of frustrated and passionate commenters. I could feel the same pull that drew me to Sam that day, the desire to spark conversation and tease out the complexities hidden within seemingly simple questions. Reading through the flurry of responses, I found myself immersed in various perspectives, some people pleading for change, arguing against an oversaturation of a specific disreputable link type, while others embodied the quintessential Reddit spirit of rebellion, insisting that freedom of expression should trump the inconvenience of filtering out the noise. The debate felt visceral and vital, echoing the very conversations I had with Sam when he opened up to me about his struggles. It made me reflect deeply on our small circle dynamics in a larger digital landscape. As I began typing my own comment, I noticed a thread that spoke about the weight of online presence and how not everyone felt valued within these expansive communities. It made me think of Sam again, and how our talks had unearthed layers of vulnerability tucked away behind his laid-back demeanor. My fingers hovered over the keyboard as I paused, contemplating how my words might resonate with someone who needed them just as I had needed Sam's honesty. I recounted my experiences of feeling lost in a sea of opinions and how it often took a single nudge to recognize the importance of speaking up, a reminder that every virtual voice had the potential to amplify someone's reality. I felt a surge of purpose, realizing that even while wrapped snugly within the digital ether, there existed a sacred connection among us all, a web of humanity transcending screens and avatars. As I hit post, I sighed, feeling a mix of nervousness and relief. Would my words spark reflection, perhaps even inspire someone to courageously confront a hidden truth? I returned to scrolling, my heart beating gently in tandem with the rhythm of familiar comments and discussions. Hours passed like slow-moving clouds, and yet it felt as if each moment wove another thread into the fabric of my night. When fatigue began to set in, I scrolled to the top of the thread one final time, pausing at my original comment. It was alive, buried beneath a cascade of new replies. To my surprise, a series of thoughtful reflections unfurled in response to my simple nudge, a ripple effect echoing the very change I celebrated with Sam. People were sharing their own experiences, confessing to moments of doubt where they'd felt overlooked, or admitting they had long shelved their thoughts because they were afraid of being banned from discussions altogether. Suddenly, I felt less like a spectator and more like a participant in an ongoing dialogue. It was in those moments that I realized there was tremendous power in the mundane swap of hypothetical questions and shared traumas that unfolded in forums like these. 12 new notifications chimed, and I opened them one by one, feeling this gentle warmth swelling within me like the cozy embrace of my blanket. Every response revealed another story, another life that had shifted in some way, shaped by connection and understanding, even strangers acknowledging shared fears, laughter shared over memes, or heartfelt apologies raining down in the wake of misunderstandings. As I finally prepared to close my laptop, a comment stood apart, resonating deep within me. "Thank you for reminding me I am not alone. I've been afraid to share my opinion on X because I didn't think anyone would care." It felt like a small victory in a vast sea of anonymity, to know that perhaps my words had found a home in someone's heart. A soft smile crept across my face as realization settled in that this digital space could be an oasis from the world's coldness, a realm where compassion thrived, just like the companionship I had found with Sam. Slipping into bed, I let the day's conversations weave into my dreams, and I thought of how often we confine ourselves within imaginary barriers while the universe pulses around us, inviting us to let go and embrace the voices that dance in the shared air. It occurred to me that sometimes, love and honesty could extend beyond our immediate circles, reaching out through the vastness of the internet, waiting patiently for those brave enough to grasp them. Yes, it was a lovely evening after all, both in the digital realm and in my soul, and as I drifted off, I held on to the hope that tomorrow might bring another story worth telling, reminding me anew of the power of our connections, wherever they may live. The next day, I found myself wandering through the familiar threads of my favorite subreddits, my heart slightly lighter than it had been before. There was something comforting about diving into the stories of strangers, each post radiating a raw vulnerability that could resonate with the loneliest of souls. I clicked on a thread titled "What are your thoughts on a Reddit-wide ban of X links?" Instead of the usual memes and snarky comments, the replies were a tapestry of experiences showing just how intertwined our lives could be. People were discussing issues related to the controversial links, which often led to discussions about relationships, trust, and the very essence of sharing our experiences online. One user, who I later learned was named Hannah, shared a heartfelt confession about a past betrayal that had occurred because of one such link. Her story struck a chord in me. She wrote about a friend who had shared a private moment publicly, and how it shattered their trust beyond repair. As I read through her narrative, I felt her pain, a visceral ache that I remembered too well from my own experiences with Sam. The comments turned into a collective therapy session, each new reply revealing layers of hurt and healing. People began to share their own stories of loss and redemption, and as the thread blossomed, so did my understanding of how intricate and fragile our digital connections were. With each response, it became increasingly clear how our interactions shaped not just our online lives but our real-world ones too. I felt a tug at my heart when Hannah updated her post to share that she had reached out to her friend after years of silence. She was ready to embrace the vulnerability of forgiveness. In that moment, I realized that perhaps those threads, the ones filled with debates and discussions, were not just pixels on a screen but lifelines connecting us to the essence of what it means to be human. They were invitations to explore deeper themes of empathy, understanding, and the complexity of relationships. Late that night, as I snuggled deeper under my blanket, I had the sensation of unveiling hidden threads of compassion and resilience. Beneath the surface of online discussions, there was a current of connectedness, providing warmth in the cold anonymity of the internet. It felt like I was tapping into something much larger, a shared humanity woven through our stories. My mind drifted back to my friendship with Sam and how our candid conversation had nurtured a garden of trust where none had stood before. I hoped that somehow, I could be the nudge for someone else, just as you might find that flickering light in a dim room. The idea filled me with a tranquil sense of purpose, and I drifted off to sleep once more, eager for what morning might unfold in this ever-evolving dialogue of life and connections. The next morning, I woke up with a peculiar sense of urgency, driven by the desire to share the power of honesty and compassion. I penned down my thoughts about the previous night's thread, capturing the spirit of understanding that flowed through the comments where Hannah had bravely laid bare her heart. I titled my post, "Sometimes, Healing Comes from Unexpected Places." I wrote not just to share my experience, but to remind the world that our voices matter, that even in our vulnerability, we hold the keys to connection and healing. A flood of responses came in, the kind that reinforced my belief in the goodness of our collective spirit. Many users poured their hearts out, sharing experiences of estrangement, reconciliation, and the various shades of love that had shaped their lives. I felt an overwhelming sense of gratitude wash over me as I read through the heartfelt messages. There was a comment from a user named Mark that caught my eye. "I've been so scared to talk to my sister after what happened between us. I think I'll finally reach out. Thank you for this." At that moment, I realized this little act of sharing might have a ripple effect, nudging someone toward courage, just like my connection with Sam had. Later in the day, I received a direct message from Hannah, thanking me for my post. She told me she had sat down with her friend, and they had both ended up crying over coffee, airing the grievances that had festered for far too long, and began to mend what they thought was irreparably broken. It struck me how interconnected our lives truly were, threads weaving through one another, forming patterns of sorrow and joy. Each interaction, every reply, was a whispered invitation to open up, to engage, and ultimately, to heal. For the first time in a long while, the universe felt like it was affirming my existence, holding up a mirror to reflect the shared stories and triumphs over adversity. As the sun dipped below the horizon, I took a moment to reflect on how far we'd all come, in our little corners of the internet and within the overlaps of our lives. It dawned on me that no matter how daunting the world could seem, we had the power to bring light to dark places, share warmth in cold corners, and cultivate understanding from vulnerability. Maybe every post was a chance for connection, a potential to stir something deep within the hearts of others. The universe was still out there, waiting to be embraced, and as I tucked into bed that night, I couldn't help but smile softly, thinking of all the stories yet to unfold, the lives yet to touch, and the love that would ripple far beyond what I could see. I held close the hope that tomorrow might again bring forth another connection threaded with compassion, another invitation to lean into our shared humanity, and perhaps even a few more moments worth savoring. It started as a typical Tuesday morning for me, the usual gray light filtering through the half-drawn curtains and the sounds of the neighborhood waking up. I shuffled into the dim kitchen, coffee brewing, thoughts racing ahead of me like they often do. I was just 2 weeks into my new job as a healthcare data analyst, and despite the monotonous tasks, I found myself strangely excited, like this was my first little step into a big, adult world. I had been vying for this position ever since I graduated, earning my degree with the hopes of making a real impact in the world of health services. My enthusiasm, however, took a strange twist when I received a call from my boss that day. He told me there had been a mix-up with patient records at a nearby clinic and that I would need to come in at the end of the day to help fix it. As someone who had always valued personal privacy and the importance of confidentiality, I was unsettled. The notion of accessing sensitive patient files made me shiver, but I shook off the discomfort, reminding myself this was part of my job. Fast forward to the evening, and I entered the clinic, feeling a knot in my stomach. The fluorescent lights above buzzed ominously as I was introduced to the IT team and pointed toward a small room cluttered with outdated computers. That's when I encountered her, Melissa, a nurse who seemed to embody calm in the storm of disarray surrounding us. As we sat together trying to untangle the mess, I tried to keep things lighthearted, joking about the nature of paperwork and technology, but she quickly quieted. "Just remember, HIPAA violations are serious," she said, her voice low and slightly unsteady. That warning took root in my mind, not because I was making any potential mistake but because I sensed something deeper in her tone, a burden she carried. I pressed her about it gently. "You seem stressed, Melissa. Is there something I should know?" She sighed, glancing at the door. "It's not about the patients who've already seen their records. It's about a new patient. You won't believe what happened." I felt a chill run through me as she recounted the tale. A patient, a woman named Sarah, had shown up mysteriously at the clinic requesting her records but had no identity. Melissa said Sarah wore odd clothing, spoke in riddles, and had an unsettling gaze that left the staff feeling watched. I could almost see the tension in her shoulders lighten as she spoke, a shared fear between us. It turned the mundane task of analyzing data into something almost mystical. Hours passed, and we were deep into a discussion of privacy, ethics, and the essence of patient identity when a sharp knock on the door jolted me upright. A man, disheveled and panting, burst in. "You found her, right? You have to find her," he yelled. The room fell silent before I collected my thoughts. Confusion swirled around us. Melissa ushered him outside, but I could hear a harried discussion happening just beyond the walls. It felt like an eruption that I was not meant to witness. When they returned, tension wound tighter than a coiled spring. The man explained, "Sarah is not who she says she is. She doesn't have a history in our files. It's like she's a ghost." He looked feverish, as though he had been chasing shadows. My heart raced. Was the woman we were trying to help someone trapped in a web of secrets? Or was she a danger, cloaked in anonymity? I felt a wave of uncertainty wash over me, but curiosity tugged at my senses too. "What does she want?" I finally asked. The man's eyes darted, fear shadowing his breath. "She wants answers. She thinks someone is after her." We were thrown into chaos. As Melissa and I resumed our tasks, I could feel my pulse quicken at every intimate detail. Data entries felt like interrogations as I plotted course after course through our systems, trying to piece together the answers to the enigma concealed within our sterile walls. The weight of records heavier than I'd anticipated hung over me. I replayed our conversation about HIPAA over and over, ensuring I was not crossing lines I didn't intend to cross, while my mind tangled with each unexplained piece of information. It became an obsession. How could a woman simply not exist? As the sun fell further, shadows began to stretch along the walls, the clinic growing quieter. Eventually, Melissa and I navigated deeper into the records, sensing a shift of urgency as we worked to uncover the truth. When we finally hit pay dirt, an old record buried so deep that no one had bothered to check, it felt like winning a race against the clock. Her name popped up alongside a series of previous appointments and a disconcerting note that detailed an anomalous transfer between facilities. Melissa smiled with relief, but I couldn't shake the discomfort settling over me. I expected every moment to slip into the realm of horror, fearing it might spiral out of control. As we walked the records to our supervisor, I felt a strange pull back toward Sarah, like she was a part of me now. What came next was surprising. Melissa and I both had to face frustrating bureaucracy and laws, trying to make sense of Sarah's identity, the paperwork spinning us around in knots of red tape. Each phone call became a trial, testing the limits of propriety and patience until I was left wondering if we would ever resolve the chaos that had enveloped us. As the clock struck midnight, a decision had to be made, to keep looking and risk breaking rules or accept what we discovered and move on. Taking a breath, I opted for honesty. We approached our supervisor and bared the whole situation, feeling the weight of truth lifting us slightly. What followed were some tense moments I will never forget. My heart raced as the supervisor scrutinized our findings, and I held my breath, praying we hadn't ventured too far. In that moment of clarity, I understood the gravity of our roles, the essence of humanity fused into every record, and how vital it was to respect these lives woven together through the healthcare system. As for Sarah, the answer came swiftly. The right personnel followed up, though I never learned what fate awaited her. I left the clinic that night exhausted yet relieved, acutely aware that the thrill of ethereal mystery and the deeply rooted seriousness of caring for patient identity often clash in the world of healthcare. Months passed after that fateful evening, and the experience began to fade into a soft recollection, just another tale tucked into my mind, woven among the many threads of my career. Then, one quiet Sunday afternoon, I received a familiar message. It was Melissa. "Hey," it read, "you won't believe what I've just found out about Sarah." Curiosity surged through me, and as I read, I couldn't help but wonder if I hadn't just become part of the story of someone who had carved their existence between identities. Just like that, I realized, sometimes those we think are lost may hold secrets worth keeping, and our paths cross not by mere chance, but by a shared understanding of who we are beneath the masks we wear. And so I relayed back, "Tell me everything." Melissa's response came swiftly, like a whisper caught on the wind, full of urgency and intrigue. "I was going through some old social media posts, and it appears Sarah's been leading a double life. Did you know she used to work in a psychiatric hospital? She posted about her experiences under a pseudonym, and there are some pretty intense revelations in there. You should see the comments she gets, people sharing their struggles, their fears, and tying them into her stories in ways that are surprisingly insightful." A chill ran through me. I had known Sarah only as the soft-spoken woman with a penchant for vintage books and herbal teas, never as someone who had grappled with the complexities of mental health in a professional setting. "Do you think she's still in touch with anyone from there?" I texted, my mind racing with a river of thoughts. Would knowing more about her spark some deeper connection, or was this merely stumbling onto territory better left alone? Melissa replied in a way that made me think she had kicked her own thoughts around, too. "Well, I didn't dig that deep, but she mentioned a case in one of her posts. It was cryptically fascinating. You could check if any of her old colleagues are still around." The notion struck me hard. What if this case was pivotal, not only to Sarah's past but perhaps intertwined with her reasons for stepping back from society? Instinctively, I felt a wave of empathy wash over me mixed with a hint of dread. I couldn't help but picture Sarah, clocking in day after day, carrying the weight of another person's pain, while she herself might have been drowning in her own struggles. The next day was a haze of mixed emotions, curiosity mixed with caution. Somewhere within me, a voice cautioned against delving too deep, reminding me of my role as the friend of the storyteller, not the investigator. But I felt that I couldn't just let this mystery slip through my fingers. Before I knew it, I began my search, tracking down various forums where ex-employees shared their experiences. Each thread unraveled new layers, pieces of a puzzle that felt achingly familiar. Eventually, I stumbled across a name that stood out, Dr. Hargrove, Sarah's former supervisor. The reviews of her were a mix of reverence and caution, as people praised her for her intuition but also warned of her unwavering intensity. Feeling daring, I reached out to Dr. Hargrove via LinkedIn, but the message sat unanswered for weeks as I tried to balance my fascination with an uneasy sense that I was intruding on something far more personal than I could understand. Then, almost unexpectedly, the notification popped up, a quick blip that sent adrenaline coursing through me as I read Dr. Hargrove's reply. "Let's discuss. How did you come to know Sarah?" I paused, contemplating how to respond, businesslike, or friendly and casual, but in the end, emotion tugged at me. I filled my response with the truth, how Sarah had become dear to me over our conversations, artfully circumventing the eerie nature of my inquiry. Soon, we arranged a call. As we spoke, Dr. Hargrove shared fragmented tales of Sarah's time in the ward, illuminating flashes of bravery amidst darker times, illuminating how she had been a fierce advocate for her patients' rights. It felt like I was sitting on a springboard, ready to leap into the unknown depths of Sarah's past, and yet I could hardly breathe as she detailed an incident with a patient that almost garnished Sarah both admiration and ire within the hospital community. She pushed boundaries in ways that rattled some of the staff, the doctor described, her voice steady yet tinged with endearment. She believed in radical empathy, often becoming too emotionally involved in her cases. It led to a very critical incident that forced her to reevaluate her place in the world. My heart raced at the weight of her words. I realized that Sarah held stories that might shatter what I thought I knew of her. They were pieces of her soul woven into those moments, and whether she shared them freely or kept them locked away, they remained an inseparable part of her journey. As the call ended, a lingering question hung in the air. Was this knowledge something I should reveal to her, or would it expose vulnerabilities that Sarah had worked hard to conceal? In the following days, my heart grew heavier, crafting narratives in my mind where revealing this truth brought only pain. One night, unable to sleep, I took the plunge. I texted her, my fingers trembling over the screen. "Hey, can we talk? I found out some things about your past." Silence enveloped the air, thick and awkward as I stared at my phone, half hoping for a reply but equally dreading it. When her response finally came, it read simply, "About what?" My pulse quickened. She had a right to know that her reflections had inspired earthquakes in someone else's life. I told her everything, all at once, my heart racing, projecting my excitement while fearing the abrupt end of our connection. It was futile to deny, she was a storyteller in every sense. But Sarah's reply was slower this time, each dot cueing a new pang of anxiety within me. The chat fizzled out, leaving a stuttered beat of anticipation hanging thick in the air. With each passing minute, I replayed every detail, how brave she had been, how compassionate her words were, yet I feared for the memories that the shadows carved into her spirit, ones she may not wish to confront. When she finally typed, I didn't think anyone would ever ask me about that. It has been a while. I felt a tidal wave of relief rush through me. I stepped carefully, acknowledging the fragility housed in her revelation while also wanting to encourage her to share more. We spent hours on the phone after that, her words weaving a tapestry of pain and hope in ways I had never imagined before. I finally grasped the depth of her character. She wasn't lost between the stories and identities, she was the sum of them, an intricate web of experiences that continued to shape her. When our call finished, I felt a profound sense of gratitude, longing to draw her out of the shell that had quietly encased her. It became evident, sometimes, behind the closed doors of old memories, lies a path to healing, a beckoning for both of us to remind ourselves who we were beyond the masks we created. As the days turned into weeks, we exchanged messages more freely now, her guarded tone melting into something friendly and real. And I wondered, in passing, about what stories I too held tightly behind my own facade, cherished fragments that might intertwine with hers. Perhaps we both shared the weight of pasts and secrets, each of us learning to navigate our truths together, a quiet understanding that some journeys are meant to be shared. And so, in this tangled dance of revelations, Melissa's message came to echo within me. Sometimes those we think are lost hold secrets worth keeping, and who knows? Perhaps in every hidden truth lies the potential for connection greater than we could ever envision. Melissa's response was instant, a flurry of text that felt both electric and weighty. You know Sarah, right? She worked at that clinic a few months back, the one where you used to go for therapy? I nodded to myself, even though she couldn't see me. The memories of that clinic were still vivid, the sterile smell of antiseptic mingling with the faint scent of lavender that the receptionist sprinkled in the air. Sarah had been warm, a gentle presence amidst the cold sterility of mental health care. Well, Melissa continued, she's been let go. They said it was for violating protocol, but there's more to it. At that moment, curiosity twisted in my gut. Sarah had always seemed so careful, so attuned to the patient's needs. What did she do? I typed back, my fingers trembling slightly as I awaited Melissa's reply. I ran into her at the bar a week ago, Melissa wrote slowly, and she was different. More erratic. She mentioned something about patient files, but she didn't elaborate. I think she might have been researching something she shouldn't have. And you know what's wild? She was asking about you. My heart skipped a beat. Why would Sarah be looking into me? Was she worried, or was it something deeper? The butterflies in my stomach fluttered violently as I recalled my last session with Sarah. She'd seemed concerned when I mentioned dreams that felt too real and haunting moments that clung to me like shadows. Was my own world now somehow threading into Sarah's unraveling tale? I let the questions linger as I replied, "What do you mean, asking about me?" What did she say? The pause felt interminable, each second stretching into infinity as I held my breath. Finally, Melissa's words came trickling through, laden with weight. She seemed concerned about your last diagnosis. She mentioned she was worried you were in more danger than you realized. I felt a chill creep up my spine. My mind raced back to those countless times I had poured my heart into therapy, the honest exchanges that had found a home in Sarah's understanding gaze. Had I inadvertently exposed some hidden secret of my own? The idea that I might be a part of a story much larger than my own made me uneasy. I typed, "Danger? How? I don't understand." But before Melissa could respond, a flood of memories surged within me, the names, the diagnoses, the whispers of HIPAA that seemed to echo through the hallways of every psychiatric facility I had ever stepped foot in. Suddenly, I recalled my own feelings of being trapped, seen yet unseen, always an open book to those with the power to scribble in my pages. In that moment of reflection, I began to wonder if Sarah had realized that perhaps I was more than just another patient, more than just a series of symptoms and treatment plans drafted in the dim light of a therapist's office. Maybe I too had secrets worth sharing, though I had built my own wall to protect them. My thoughts spiraled again as Melissa's follow-up came. She wanted me to find you and tell you this. She thinks you need to see her, to understand something she uncovered. My mind reeled. Was it reckless to consider meeting with someone who had been fired, someone on the fringes of this clinical world? Yet, a part of me felt the pull towards Sarah, an anchor that called out through the disarray of my thoughts. Maybe she held the key to understanding those hidden fragments of myself I had kept so tightly wrapped. Where can I find her? I found myself typing without thought. Melissa replied almost immediately, I can give you her address, But I don't feel good about this, you know? Be careful. That care rang like a distant bell against the backdrop of my apprehension, and I found comfort in it, a reminder that I wasn't truly alone in this moment. As I read the address, a sense of determination washed over me, mingling with the anxiety that had taken residence in my chest. I could investigate my own narrative. Perhaps, like Sarah, I had been woven into a larger fabric of existence, one that danced between known truths and hidden realities. And so, with every heartbeat echoing my pulsing thoughts, I made up my mind. I needed to meet Sarah, to forge a connection that could shed light on her mysteries and perhaps my own. The sun dipped low in the sky as I prepared myself for the encounter. I felt the shapes of the shadows outside elongate, stretching toward the horizon, much like the threads of fate pulling us together. As I drove toward her address, the scenery blurred by, each mile marked with a question, a longing, an eagerness to embrace whatever awaited me. My mind buzzed like a hive, each curiosity a little bee searching for a flower, unsure of the nectar hidden within. Would I find answers to my own buried truths, or would I unravel the deeper meanings behind Sarah's journey? I parked outside a modest apartment complex that looked both inviting and intimidating, and as I stepped out of the car, a strange calm settled over me, settling the racing thoughts tumbling like jumbled leaves in the wind. I approached her door and raised my hand to knock, my pulse quickening as I fought the urge to turn back. Then, before I could second-guess myself, I knocked. Each sound echoed like a heartbeat against the wood. I stood there, waiting, breath held. It felt as though the world had condensed into this moment. A few moments passed before the door creaked open, revealing Sarah's familiar face, though it seemed altered, marked by worry and disarray. Her eyes flickered with recognition and a hint of relief, as if she had been bracing herself for this moment. "You came," she said softly, and just like that, I stepped over the threshold, into her story, our stories united, as curiosity whispered infinite possibilities of truths yet to be revealed. And as I crossed into her living space, amidst the clutter of papers, stray books on mental health, and empty coffee cups, that sense of connection blossomed, cradled in the realization that perhaps every secret worth keeping leads us not just into shadows, but toward the light of understanding ourselves and one another.